Hi there. I've come across a request from one of my dear viewers to render the likeness of Nakaska, the kind golem guardian of the Golden Forest. I've already got some great ideas for this guy and his story, which I'll be very happy to start sketching in just a second. If you haven't seen my videos before, this series is part of a world-building project for a fantasy world ruled by goblins called Goberland. It's created by names that viewers leave in the comment section of my videos. From those names, I create a character design as well as some lore around the character, tying them all into the same universe. If you have a character you'd like to be included in Goberland, feel free to comment a name down below, and while you're at it, maybe even like or subscribe. As we begin Nakaska's design, my thoughts are on another golem design that I made on TikTok back in the long distant days of 2023, Ku, the Golem of the Green Fort. I really liked how this design turned out, and I thought it would be fun to give it a spiritual successor of sorts. So starting out, I'm sticking very close to this original design and my inspirations from back then. I think in the modern era, it's hard to picture what a kind golem might look like without immediately thinking of the iron golems from the game Minecraft. These fellas are really fun. As part of their mechanics, they'll go up to baby villagers and offer them flowers. This, as well as their design as a whole, is directly inspired by the giant robots from the movie Castle in the Sky. Not my favorite Ghibli film, that's got to go to Princess Mononoke, but still very nostalgic for me. And it's something I'm keeping in the front of my mind while I struggle with these sketches. And struggling I am indeed. I found there to be a bit of a pattern forming with these character design videos. I'll latch onto a name because I think it sounds really cool, it could have a fun design and provide some interesting lore, but as soon as I get into the weeds of the design process, I spend forever fiddling with dozens of different designs. Funnily enough, I had told myself at the start of this one that it should be pretty quick and easy, as my last video took much longer than I expected to finish. Shocker though, this one dragged out as well. I'm bringing a couple elements from my 2023 golem design into this one that I really liked, and because I thought it would be fun to imply they had a similar origin. One such element is this immense size. I want Nakaska to tower within the forest in which he resides. Another element is this funny egg-shaped torso, with carved ribs and a hollow abdomen kind of evoking the image of a skeleton. Hidden within this cavity I also have this perfect sphere that I imagine is made out of bronze or something similar, providing a kind of joint for the torso to swivel and hinge. Would this work in real life? Of course not, but it looks like it could work, and with a bit of implied magic and suspended disbelief, you wouldn't blink twice at it. In general though, I do want this guy to look distinct and unique among my other designs, so I'm trying to branch out a bit. I'm starting this effort here with this detailed sketch. I'm focusing a lot on silhouette as well as expanding on elements I know I enjoy, such as the line work for the ribs, and these prominent shoulders and elbows. The most noticeable change, of course, has to be the giant hammerhead thing it's got going on. It's kind of got a Mjolnir vibe in the shape, though I was also toying with the idea that, like with the real-life hammerhead shark, the shape of the head has a function in perception. With hammerheads, the entire head is lined with sensory organs known as ampullae of Lorenzini, which allow the shark to detect electrical fields. All sharks have these, but the amount of them spread across the wide face of a hammerhead allows them to more easily triangulate and sniff out stingrays buried under the sand. As a bit of an homage to this little factoid which I retained from my middle school obsession with marine biology, I added two large eyes carved on either side of this guy's face. As I finished up with this design though, I very quickly realized that even though I really like how it looks, it simply does not fit with the idea I had in mind for this character, and scrapped the whole thing. It just looks too futuristic and robot-like, which is cool and all, but it's just not the vibe I was going for. So, moving ever onward, I started a new design, this time keeping in mind the environment I wanted the figure to be placed in. I wanted to move as far as possible from the whole futuristic thing, so I went in an expressly archaic direction, in multiple ways. My inspirations for this newer design eventually landed in the grotesques that you'll often find carved into buildings from the Middle Ages, believed to be used to frighten away evil spirits. For his body, I want it to look like he's in this perpetual hunch, like an old man whose spine is curved after years of holding up his own weight. Not only will this create an interesting silhouette, but it will also create some much needed value changes in the shadow below his head. I also took a lot of inspiration from the potentially over 1,000-year-old Cernobos chalk giant in southern England. He's got a particular piece of anatomy that is quite prominent and quite demonetizable, so here I've given him a pair of jorts to preserve his modesty. Basically, I'm just trying to make this guy look ancient and overgrown, little bits of rough-hewn stone poking through the ever-present moss. I also end up giving him some horns, kind of similar to my first attempt, but still just trying to make the head stick out a bit more, because as is, it's kind of sunken into his shoulders. At this point, I think it's time to start work on the background, and for once, I knew what I wanted from the start, and it worked. A beautiful golden forest, like what you'd see in birch or aspen forests in the fall. This all, of course, is much easier said than done, and it's here where I sunk most of my time with this piece. The sheer amount of detail work I had to do for each of these layers of the forest was mind-numbing. Thankfully, it didn't require too much guesswork, and I have enough experience with this type of forest that I got it to look right pretty easily. But the real tragedy occurred when I tested out putting the golem in the scene, and it just didn't fit. I tried messing with it for a while, but nothing was working. I came to the conclusion that it was due to several issues. 1. The values of this scene don't provide enough contrast, specifically in comparison to the much brighter trunks of the trees. 2. The amount of green on him makes him not stand out very well among all the other foliage, surprisingly enough. And 3. The pose itself does not indicate clearly enough that he's being viewed from a lower perspective, losing the impression of his size despite being probably close to about 40 feet in height. These are probably all things I could fix in time with enough small changes, but I knew it just wouldn't look as good as if I scrapped it and started over yet again. Round 3, and sure enough, third time's the charm. I started out by just doing my shotgun method of trying to throw as many lines at the page as I could, seeing if I might be able to create some novel silhouette that I wouldn't have been able to think of otherwise, really leaning into a more spooky aesthetic. When that didn't work, I basically just tried to make a spookier version of my previous design, with a downturned head and a devious little grin, and a much more pronounced hunch. This combination of traits really saved me, I think. They ended up creating much more prominent shadows, and a slight perspective effect that brought the illusion of size back to life. I also ended up making the horns a bit more like the horns of cattle, and perhaps a bit more diabolical. This specific idea came to me while playing the game Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, funnily enough during a quest where you're trying to help an artist find his inspiration, and you come across an old pagan shrine to an ancient god of cattle who has horns. It doesn't really look like how this turned out at all, but I thought that this kind of allusion to paganism might give us, who in the most part come from cultures heavily influenced by Abrahamic religion, an even deeper recognition of the antiquity of this golem. Now, for an allegedly kindly guardian, Nagaska did turn out to be pretty spooky looking. His deep-set eyes and intense expression are nothing short of unsettling. And even despite his apparent age, it's easy to assume he could be quite effective in combat. His hands aren't articulated enough to hand flowers to goblin children like iron golems would. In fact, looking more like large spades that could do some serious damage to even the most heavily armored knight. However, I do like the idea that this clearly dangerous creature, construction maybe, is quite docile if you pay the proper respect to his forest. Definitely an interesting concept, I think, and I hope you will agree, as now that this piece is finished, we can finally hear the tale of Great Nagaska, the guardian golem of the Golden Glade. The broodlands of yesteryear and days of yore were a place of countless wonders. Trees stretched taller than mountains, scratching the heavens, taproots supping directly from the sanguine aquifers. Beasts older than godkind, who would view our species as not more than worm spawn, roamed free through endless tracts of untamed wilds. They built monuments to sleeping gods, praying they would never wake. There was only endless summer, and all the leaves shone golden in the primordial heat. But then the first rains came, and with its drumming on the soft soil, summoned the first goblins, beckoning them upwards. This rain was a harbinger of doom, bringing in the era of bronze and flame, which molded the broodlands into how we know them today. Not quite so grand as they once were, yet far more suitable for godkind. The mighty brood trees of old were felled, used to fuel furnaces or in framing our first halls. acclaimed for their strength and durability. Many of the great keeps through the land still boast of the existence of this storied timber in their walls. Some scant, stunted pockets of brood trees still grow, though only in ones and twos, scattered through and hidden in great bogs. One surviving glade has been spoken of, however. Its location is not widely known, as the local villages protect knowledge of it fiercely. They attribute the survival of this glade to some mystical force, a remnant of times predating goblin existence, keeping the glade safe from any spoiling force. It poses no danger, so long as one doesn't approach the glade with exploitation in mind. Even the smallest goblin can stand in its immense shadow without fear of harm. When one attempts to invade the further depths of the forest, the guardian will merely lower one great arm the size of a large tree trunk and gently usher the individual back from the tree line. As for what happens should one not heed this warning, small craters are occasionally found, filled with a red pulp, nearby trees splattered in a perfect ring, as if a large tomato was dropped from high up. By way of oral histories, we know this giant's name is Nakaska. Little else is known, and even less is believed. The villagers worship Nakaska, creating a localized mythos around the giant and its forest. They believe that within the Golden Glade lies a doorway to the land of the honored dead, and only those who are permitted by Nakaska may enter. Other tales speak of a great monument that exists deep within the forest. Some allege to have glimpsed a black pillar through its blowing golden leaves. It must be a significant size to be visible through the trees, yet on subsequent visits, none could spy the odd construction. As such, it's been brushed off as merely more superstition that surrounds the enigmatic forest. However, many have pointed out that perhaps there is more to this glade and its guardian. Perhaps the giant Nakaska does not seek to only protect the rare trees that grow in the forest, highly valuable as they are. A guardian of its might is far too impressive for what in the day of its creation would have simply been just another glade of this once common tree. Perhaps there exists something further within those golden depths. Something that those prehistoric beings thought should be kept safe. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support me doing these videos, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like and a follow. If you'd like to help out more directly, I'd be quite grateful if you could throw me a few bucks on my store or on my Patreon. Thanks so much to all of you who have helped out. It really means the world. The links for both my Patreon and my store will be in the description below. Thank you.